My name is Chaim Goldstein, 68 years old, living in the home I built with Martha, my wife of 42 years before cancer took her. This two-story colonial has been my sanctuary for 4 decades. That was until my son Noah and his wife Amanda moved in after losing their jobs. I never expected to hear those words in my own home. Amanda looked me straight in the eyes and said it. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt disrespected in your own home. Trust me, what happens next changed everything. The house felt empty after Martha passed away 5 years ago. Every creak of the floorboards echoed through the hallways. Every meal eaten alone at our oak dining table felt like a reminder of what I had lost. Martha and I had built this house together back in the 80s, when property in this neighborhood was still affordable for a construction foreman like myself. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a finished basement, and a garden that Martha had lovingly cultivated with roses, hydrangeas, and a small vegetable patch. For 3 years after her passing, I lived alone. My friends would visit occasionally, bringing casseroles and company, but they had their own families to tend to. My son Noah would call weekly and visit monthly, usually without Amanda. These visits were brief, often centered around helping me with technology or fixing something around the house. I cherished those moments, but they were fleeting. Everything changed 2 years ago. Noah called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice strained and hesitant. He had been laid off from his accounting job at a firm that was downsizing. Amanda, who worked in retail management, had also lost her position when their store closed. They had been struggling to make rent on their apartment and were facing eviction. Without hesitation, I offered them my home. The house had 2 spare bedrooms, since my daughters had moved out decades ago. One was set up as a guest room, and the other had become a storage space for memories and mementos. I told Noah they could stay as long as they needed to get back on their feet. I was secretly relieved to have company again, to have life filling the quiet corners of my home. The first few months were wonderful. Amanda cooked dinner most nights, recipes she found online that were admittedly more interesting than my rotation of 5 dishes I had learned to make after Martha passed. Noah spent his days applying for jobs and networking. In the evenings, we would watch television together or play board games. I taught Amanda how to play chess, and she picked it up quickly, becoming a formidable opponent. I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I would wake up early to prepare coffee for everyone. I showed Noah how to maintain the garden that had begun to wilt under my neglectful care. Amanda took an interest in the photo albums I had of Noah as a child, and we would spend hours talking about family stories and traditions. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. Noah became more withdrawn as his job search dragged on. He spent more time out of the house, claiming to be meeting with potential employers or former colleagues who might have leads. The chess games with Amanda became less frequent, and then stopped altogether. 6 months into their stay, I noticed the first significant changes to my home. I came back from a doctor appointment to find that the living room had been rearranged. The sofa that had always faced the eastern window, where Martha loved to watch the sunrise, was now against the northern wall. The bookshelves had been reorganized, with many of my books relegated to boxes in the basement to make room for decorative items Amanda had brought from their apartment. When I asked about the changes, Amanda smiled brightly and said, "I thought it would be nice to freshen up the space a bit." The furniture arrangement was blocking the natural flow of the room. Noah nodded in agreement, adding, "It looks great, doesn't it, Dad?" Not wanting to seem ungrateful for their presence or create conflict, I nodded and said it looked fine, though it felt strange to see my familiar space transformed without my input. That was just the beginning. Over the next few months, more changes followed. The kitchen cabinets were reorganized, with my everyday dishes moved to higher shelves, while Amanda's colorful dinnerware took their place. The framed family photos that had lined the hallway were replaced with modern art prints that Amanda said would update the aesthetic. My bathroom items were consolidated to a single drawer to make room for Amanda's extensive collection of skincare products. The guest bathroom they used was completely redecorated with new towels, shower curtains, and accessories in teal and gray, colors Martha would have never chosen for our home. Each change on its own seemed minor, something not worth creating conflict over. But collectively, they represented a gradual takeover of the space I had shared with Martha, the home we had built together with care and intention. Noah was rarely around to discuss these changes. When he was home, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone or laptop. Our conversations became superficial, focusing on the weather or sports rather than anything meaningful. When I tried to broach the subject of how long they planned to stay or how their job searches were progressing, Noah would quickly change the subject or suddenly remember an email he needed to send. Despite my growing unease, I held on to hope. These were difficult times for Noah and Amanda. The job market was competitive, and I knew the strain of unemployment could test any relationship. I told myself that once they found stable employment, things would improve. They would find their own place again, and our relationship would return to normal. Until then, I needed to be patient and supportive. After all, what kind of father would I be if I couldn't help my son during his time of need? So, I kept my concerns to myself, swallowing my discomfort when I found my reading chair moved to accommodate Amanda's yoga space, or when the garage was reorganized without my knowledge, making it difficult for me to find my tools. I told myself that these were temporary adjustments, small sacrifices to make for family. I had no idea how much worse things would get. Around the 9-month mark of their stay, Amanda began inviting friends over regularly. At first, it was just 1 or 2 people on a weekend afternoon. I enjoyed meeting her friends Sarah and Taylor, who were polite and engaged me in conversation about my construction career and the neighborhood history. But soon, these small gatherings grew larger and more frequent. Thursday night became a regular girls' night where 4 or 5 of Amanda's friends would come over, bringing bottles of wine and snacks. They would gather in the living room, their laughter and conversation growing louder as the evening progressed. I would retreat to my bedroom, trying to read or watch television with headphones. But the noise would often continue until midnight or later. Friday and Saturday nights were even worse. Amanda began hosting dinner parties for couples they knew. The dining room table that had seated my family for decades now held strangers who barely acknowledged my presence when I passed through to get to the kitchen. Once, I overheard someone ask Amanda, "Is that your father-in-law? Does he always just wander around while you have guests?" To which Amanda replied, "Just ignore him. He likes to check that we put everything back in its proper place." They laughed, unaware or uncaring that I could hear them. The final straw came when they hosted a party that spilled into the backyard. 20 people crowded into my home on a Saturday night, music blaring from speakers set up on the patio. They moved Martha's garden furniture around to make space for a beer pong table. I found cigarette butts in the flower beds the next morning, and someone had stepped on and broken the small ceramic bird bath that Martha had hand-painted. When I confronted Noah about it the next day, he was hungover and dismissive. "Dad, we needed to blow off some steam. Job hunting is stressful," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Noah, this is still my home. I need to be consulted before you invite 20 people over." "And someone broke your mother's bird bath," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "It was just an accident," he mumbled. "We can buy you a new one. That is not the point. Your mother made that. It cannot be replaced." Noah sighed heavily, as if I was being unreasonable. "Amanda works really hard networking. These people might have job leads. You want us to find jobs and move out, right?" His implication stung. Of course I wanted them to find financial stability, but I was not trying to push them out. I just wanted mutual respect in my own home. "Noah, I am happy to have you both here, but there need to be boundaries. I cannot have my home taken over like this." He nodded absent-mindedly, promised it would not happen again, and left to meet a friend, leaving me to clean up the remaining mess from their party. Despite his promise, the gatherings continued. I began to feel like a stranger in my own home, skulking around the edges, afraid to assert myself in spaces that had once been mine. My friends stopped coming over. Jack and Bernie, who had been my poker buddies for 30 years, came for our usual Wednesday night game, only to find the dining room occupied by Amanda and 3 of her friends making vision boards. We tried to play in the kitchen, but could barely hear each other over their music and laughter. After that night, Jack suggested we move the poker game to his place permanently. "No offense, Chaim," he said quietly as they left, "but it is like walking on eggshells in there now. Is everything okay with you and the kids?" I assured him everything was fine, but his concern stayed with me. Was I being unreasonable? Was this just how modern families functioned, with the older generation expected to quietly acquiesce to the younger? I tried to speak with Noah several more times, but he was always rushing out the door or too tired to have a serious conversation. Amanda became the de facto head of the household, making decisions about groceries, decorating, and social events without consulting me. Then came the incident that truly broke my heart. I returned home from a dental appointment to find Amanda cleaning out the storage room that had housed many of Martha's belongings. Boxes had been dragged to the curb for donation pickup. When I rushed to see what was being given away, I found Martha's winter clothes, her collection of vintage teacups, and boxes of holiday decorations we had collected throughout our marriage. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice cracking as I pulled a box back from the curb. Amanda looked surprised to see me home so early. "Oh, Chaim, I was just clearing out some space. This room has been cluttered for years. Noah said you would not mind." "Not mind? These are Martha's things, my wife's belongings." I opened another box to find photo albums I had not seen in years, family recipes handwritten on index cards, a quilt Martha's mother had made. "It has been 5 years, Amanda said, her tone gentle but condescending. "We thought it might be time to let go of some of these things. It is not healthy to keep a shrine to someone who is gone." I felt as if I had been slapped. This is not a shrine. These are memories, and they are not yours to decide about. Noah came home during this confrontation, drawn by the raised voices. "Dad, Amanda was trying to help," he said, standing beside his wife. "You always say you need to organize that room. We thought we would surprise you. By throwing away your mother's things without asking me? By deciding what memories I am allowed to keep?" My voice was shaking now, not with sadness, but with anger. They exchanged a look, the kind of look that said they had discussed me when I was not around, had decided I was being irrational or stuck in the past. "We will put everything back," Noah finally said, though his tone made it clear he thought I was overreacting. I spent that evening going through each box, making sure nothing had been lost or damaged. As I handled each item, memories flooded back. Martha wearing the blue sweater on our trip to Lake Michigan, the teacups she had carefully collected from antique stores across the country, the Christmas ornaments our children had made in elementary school. The next morning, Noah and Amanda acted as if nothing had happened. No apology was offered. No acknowledgement of how their actions had affected me. Instead, Amanda announced she was repainting the spare room now that it was decluttered, and asked if I preferred mint green or pale blue. I felt invisible, my feelings dismissed, my boundaries ignored. The tension in the house grew thicker, but it was a silent tension, built on unspoken resentments and avoided conversations. I began spending more time away from home, visiting the library or the park, places where I could exist without feeling like an intruder. But I could not escape the growing realization that something fundamental had shifted in my relationship with my son, and that my home no longer felt like my own. My 68th birthday arrived on a crisp October Tuesday. Martha had always made birthdays special, decorating the house with balloons and streamers, baking my favorite lemon cake with cream cheese frosting. Since her passing, birthdays had become quiet affairs, sometimes marked by a dinner out with Noah or calls from my daughters who lived out of state. This year, I woke up with a small spark of hope. Noah and Amanda had been living with me for over a year now. Despite our recent tensions, surely they would acknowledge my birthday. I dressed carefully in a blue button-down shirt Martha had given me years ago, still in good condition though slightly faded from washing. No one was home when I came downstairs. Noah had left a note on the kitchen counter, saying he had an early interview and Amanda was meeting a friend for breakfast. Fair enough. We could celebrate later. I decided to make my birthday special myself. I drove to the grocery store and purchased ingredients for a proper family dinner. A roast with potatoes and carrots, fresh green beans, and ingredients for a homemade lemon cake that would not compare to Martha's but would satisfy my birthday tradition. I spent the afternoon cooking, the kitchen filling with familiar smells that brought back happier times. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready. The table was set with the good dishes, candles lit in the center. I had even opened a bottle of red wine to breathe. I sent Noah a text message, letting him know dinner was ready whenever they got home. 7 o'clock came and went. The roast, once perfectly done, was now overcooked as I kept it warm in the oven. The vegetables were losing their color and crispness. At 7:30, I heard the front door open and voices in the hallway. Noah and Amanda entered the kitchen, shopping bags in hand, clearly surprised to see the elaborate dinner setup. "Wow, what is all this?" Noah asked, setting down his bags. "It is my birthday dinner," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I mentioned it last week." A flash of guilt crossed Noah's face, quickly replaced with an apologetic smile. "Right. Happy birthday, Dad. Sorry, it totally slipped my mind with everything going on." Amanda did not even attempt to look remorseful. "Oh, we already ate. We stopped at that new fusion place downtown after shopping." She glanced at the table setting. "It looks nice, though." I stood there, looking at my son and his wife, trying to process that they had not only forgotten my birthday, but had gone out to eat without even sending a text to let me know. The food I had spent hours preparing was going to waste. The special evening I had planned was evaporating before my eyes. "You could have called," I said finally. "I have been keeping dinner warm for nearly 2 hours." Noah at least had the decency to look ashamed. "I am really sorry, Dad. Time got away from us." "It is not just about dinner," I said, my voice growing firmer. "It is my birthday, 68 years old today. Does that not mean anything to you?" Amanda rolled her eyes slightly, barely perceptible but impossible for me to miss. "Chaim, we said we are sorry. What do you want us to do? Pretend we are hungry and eat it anyway?" Her tone was dismissive, as if my feelings were an inconvenience. My birthday a trivial matter not worth remembering. Something snapped inside me then, a dam of patience and politeness, finally breaking under the weight of months of disrespect. "What I want," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "is to be treated with basic respect in my own home. The home I built. The home I invited you both into when you had nowhere else to go." Noah stepped forward, placating hands raised. "Dad, come on. Nobody is disrespecting you. We just forgot about dinner. That is all. It is not just dinner. It is everything. It is rearranging my house without asking, throwing away your mother's things, having parties that keep me up at night, making me feel like a guest in the home I have lived in for 40 years. Amanda crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "I think you are being dramatic. We have done nothing but help around here. This place was practically falling apart before we moved in." "Amanda," Noah cautioned, but she continued. "No, I am serious. We have updated this place, cleaned it, made it livable again, and all we get is criticism." I looked at her in disbelief. "Made it livable? I was living here just fine before you came, and I did not ask for any updates or changes. I just wanted to share my home with my son when he needed help." "Well, maybe this arrangement is not working anymore," Amanda said, her voice rising. "Maybe we should just find somewhere else to live, where we are appreciated." "Maybe you should," I answered, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Amanda's eyes narrowed. She looked at me with such contempt that I barely recognized her as the same woman who had played chess with me a year ago, who had laughed at my old jokes and asked about my life with genuine interest. "If you do not like living with us, feel free to leave," she said coldly. The kitchen fell silent. Noah stood frozen between us, his eyes wide with shock. I felt as if all the air had been sucked from the room. In my own house, paid for with my own money, maintained by my own hands for decades. I was being told to leave if I did not like how things were going. "This is my house," I said, each word clear and deliberate. "I invited you to stay here temporarily when you needed help. I did not sign it over to you." Amanda opened her mouth to respond, but Noah finally intervened. "Okay, everybody just calm down. Amanda did not mean that the way it sounded. Dad, we know this is your house. We are grateful you let us stay here. But the damage was done." I looked at the cold dinner I had prepared, the unlit birthday cake sitting on the counter, the faces of my son and his wife, who had not even remembered to wish me happy birthday until I pointed it out. I felt suddenly exhausted, bone-weary, in a way that had nothing to do with my age. "I am going to bed," I said, turning away from them. "You can clean this up." I walked upstairs to my bedroom and closed the door. Sitting on the edge of the bed, in the dark, Martha's side of the bed, empty for 5 years now, seemed to hold the ghost of her outrage on my behalf. I could almost hear her voice. "Chaim, you cannot let them treat you this way. This is our home." I spent that night thinking about everything that had happened since Noah and Amanda moved in. How gradually, but completely they had taken over. How I had allowed myself to be pushed aside in my own home, out of love for my son and fear of being alone again. I thought about Martha, about the home we had built together, about the life I was now living within its walls. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I could not continue this way, becoming smaller and less visible in the space that should be my sanctuary. I had been patient, understanding, accommodating, but there comes a point when patience becomes self-erasure, when understanding becomes enabling. I had reached that point. It was time to stand up for myself and reclaim what was mine. I woke early the next morning, my mind clear despite a nearly sleepless night. Noah and Amanda were still asleep as I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad. I wrote out a formal letter requesting that they vacate the premises within 30 days, citing the growing incompatibility of our living arrangement. I was not a lawyer, but I had helped write contracts during my construction days and knew how to sound official. As the legal owner of the property at 721 Maple Avenue, I wrote, "I am providing 30 days' notice for you to secure alternative housing arrangements and remove your belongings from the premises." I listed the current date and the date 30 days hence as the move-out deadline. I made 2 copies, signed each one, and placed them in envelopes addressed to Noah and Amanda individually. I left these on the kitchen counter, where they would see them when they came down for breakfast. Then I went out for my morning walk, giving myself space before the inevitable confrontation. When I returned 2 hours later, the house was quiet. Both envelopes were gone from the counter. Noah's car was missing from the driveway, which was not unusual. He often disappeared for the day, claiming job interviews or networking meetings. I suspected he was avoiding the tension at home as much as possible. I made myself a sandwich for lunch and ate it in the garden, enjoying the October sunshine and the late roses that were Martha's pride and joy. After lunch, I decided it was time for more definitive action. If they were not going to take my notice seriously, I would make my intentions clearer. I went to the garage and found several large moving boxes left over from when my youngest daughter had moved to California. I brought these upstairs to Noah and Amanda's bedroom. They had taken over the largest guest room, spreading their belongings into the adjacent bathroom and even the small sitting area at the end of the hallway. I began with the sitting area, carefully removing Amanda's decorative items from the shelves and wrapping them in newspaper before placing them in boxes. I labeled each box meticulously. Amanda's decor items from upstairs sitting area. I moved on to their excessive collection of throw pillows and blankets that had colonized every seating surface in the house, packing these away neatly. Next, I tackled their bathroom, boxing up the countless beauty products that had taken over every available surface. I left out essential items like toothbrushes and soap, but packed everything else. Each box was labeled with detailed contents and sealed with packing tape. I worked methodically, room by room, carefully packing their belongings. I was not throwing anything away or damaging items. I was simply organizing their possessions for their imminent departure. In the back of my mind, I knew this was a provocative action. But after a year of having my boundaries ignored, I needed to make a statement they could not dismiss. By mid-afternoon, I had filled 8 boxes with their overflow items, the possessions that had spread beyond the bedroom they had been allocated. I was just labeling the last box when I heard the front door slam. "What the hell is going on?" Amanda's voice echoed up the stairwell. I heard her rapid footsteps on the stairs before she appeared in the doorway, face flushed with anger. "What are you doing with our things?" she demanded, staring at the stack of boxes in the hallway. "I am helping you pack," I replied calmly. "Since you will be moving out soon, I thought I would get a head start on the items that have spread throughout my house." Amanda's expression shifted from shock to outrage. "You cannot just pack up our belongings. This is insane. Where is Noah? Have you seen what your father is doing?" This last question she directed at her phone as she furiously dialed my son. "Noah is not here," I said, "and I have every right to reclaim the spaces in my home. I have been more than generous allowing you both to live here rent-free for over a year." "We are family," Amanda shouted. "You do not charge family rent, and you do not kick them out without warning. I gave you written notice this morning. 30 days is standard, and family does not tell family to leave their own home," I reminded her, referring to her words from the night before. Amanda's face darkened as she spoke into her phone. "Noah, you need to come home right now. Your father has lost it. He is packing up all our stuff and says we have to move out." She paused, listening. "No, I am not exaggerating. He left some kind of eviction notice this morning, and now he is boxing everything up." As she continued her heated phone conversation, I returned to my packing, refusing to engage with her escalating rhetoric. I heard snippets of her conversation as she paced the hallway. "He is not acting normal. No, he seems angry, maybe confused. I think he might be having some kind of episode. Should we call someone?" I realized with growing alarm that she was suggesting I was having a mental health crisis, that my perfectly rational response to their disrespect was somehow evidence of cognitive decline or emotional instability. Amanda disappeared into the bedroom with her phone. I could hear her voice, but not her words. 10 minutes later, she emerged looking calmer, almost smug. "Noah is on his way home," she said, "and we have called someone who can help with this situation." "There is nothing to help with," I replied. "I am simply requesting that you find your own housing, as adults should." She did not respond, just went downstairs to wait. I continued packing, though my hands were less steady now. I was angry not just at her dismissal of my legitimate grievance, but at the implication that standing up for myself was a sign of mental instability. 30 minutes later, I heard multiple car doors slam outside. Noah's voice carried up the stairs, along with unfamiliar voices. Heavy footsteps on the porch were followed by a firm knock at the front door. I went downstairs to find 2 police officers standing in my living room, with Noah and Amanda hovering nearby. The older officer, a man about 10 years my junior with salt and pepper hair and a thick mustache, stepped forward. "Sir, are you Chaim Goldstein?" he asked. "I am," I confirmed, straightening my posture and meeting his gaze directly. "We received a call about a potential wellness concern at this address. Your family is worried that you might be experiencing some confusion or distress. They mentioned unusual behavior, including removing their belongings without permission." I looked from the officer to Noah and Amanda. My son at least had the grace to look uncomfortable, but Amanda was watching with an expression that bordered on triumphant. "Officer," I said, keeping my voice measured and calm, "I am perfectly sound of mind. What you are witnessing is a landlord-tenant dispute, not a mental health crisis." "Landlord-tenant?" the officer repeated, looking confused. "Yes. This is my home. I own it outright. My son and his wife moved in temporarily when they lost their jobs. They have been living here rent-free for over a year. After numerous boundary violations, including telling me to leave my own home if I did not like how they were running things, I have given them 30 days' notice to find other accommodations. I was packing some of their items that have spread throughout my house, not disposing of them or damaging them in any way. The younger officer glanced at Noah. "Is this accurate? You live here in your father's house?" Noah nodded reluctantly. "Yes, but we help with utilities and groceries, and we did not mean to suggest he should actually leave. It was just an argument." "I see." The older officer turned back to me. "Sir, do you have documentation proving ownership of this property?" "Of course." I went to my office and returned with my property deed and recent tax statements, all clearly showing my name as the owner. I also showed them the formal notice I had written that morning, a copy of which I had prudently kept for myself. The officers reviewed the documents and then exchanged glances. The older one handed the papers back to me. "Mr. Goldstein, this appears to be a civil matter, not a police matter. You have the right as property owner to issue notice to anyone living in your home, family, or otherwise. And you certainly have the right to pack items within your own home as long as you are not destroying property." He turned to Noah and Amanda. "Unless you have a formal lease agreement or evidence of ownership, this is legally his residence to manage as he sees fit. If you cannot resolve this as a family, you may need to consult with a housing attorney, but the police cannot intervene in what is essentially an eviction proceeding." Amanda's face registered shock, then anger. But he was acting erratically, packing up our things without permission. "Ma'am, packing belongings is not evidence of mental instability," the younger officer explained patiently. "And as the homeowner, Mr. Goldstein does not need permission to reorganize items in his residence." The officers spoke with us for a few more minutes, making sure there was no risk of violence or true mental health emergency. Satisfied that this was simply a family dispute over living arrangements, they prepared to leave. The older officer paused at the door. "Mr. Goldstein, if you have concerns about your safety or property, do not hesitate to call us. Family situations can get complicated." I thanked him for his understanding and professionalism. As the police car pulled away from the curb, I turned to face Noah and Amanda, who stood in stunned silence in the living room. "That was completely unnecessary," I said quietly. "I am not senile. I am not having a breakdown. I am simply reclaiming my home and my dignity." Noah looked ashamed. "Dad, we never meant to suggest you were losing it. Amanda was just worried about the sudden change in behavior." "There is nothing sudden about it," I replied. "I have been silently tolerating disrespect for months. Yesterday was simply the final straw." I looked directly at Amanda, and calling the police with false concerns about my mental health was manipulative and disrespectful. Amanda flushed but did not apologize. "What are we supposed to do? Just find an apartment in 30 days with no jobs?" "You have had a year to find jobs and save money," I pointed out. "And yes, that is exactly what you need to do. What any independent adults would do." I turned to go back upstairs, then paused. "The 30-day notice stands. I suggest you both start looking for alternative housing immediately. And if you ever again suggest to anyone that I am mentally unstable because I stand up for myself, the notice will become immediate." As I climbed the stairs, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and liberation. I had not wanted it to come to this, had never imagined having to evict my own son from my home, but beneath that sadness was a strengthening core of self-respect that had been dormant for too long. Martha would have been proud. The next morning, tension hung thick in the air as I prepared my usual breakfast of toast and coffee. Noah entered the kitchen, looking tired and uncomfortable. He sat across from me at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. "Dad, can we talk about this?" he asked, his voice quiet. I nodded, willing to listen, but determined not to back down. "Go ahead." "I know things have gotten out of hand," he began. "Amanda can be intense sometimes, but she did not mean what she said about you leaving. She was just upset." And calling the police to suggest I was having a mental breakdown? I asked. Was that just being upset too? Noah winced. That was wrong. I told her not to do it, but she had already made the call by the time I got home. He sighed. Look, we do appreciate everything you have done for us. Letting us stay here probably kept us from being homeless. I never wanted you to be homeless, Noah. I wanted to help. But this arrangement has become unhealthy for all of us. So what happens now? He asked. We really are still struggling financially. Amanda has a part-time retail job, but I am still looking. The job market is brutal for someone my age. I considered his words. Part of me wanted to relent, to give them more time. But another part, the part that had been silenced for too long, knew that extending their stay would only prolong the dysfunction. The 30-day notice stands, I said firmly. But I want to make sure we handle this properly, legally, and respectfully. I'm going to consult with an attorney to make sure everything is done correctly. Noah looked surprised. You are really getting a lawyer involved? Against your own son? Not against you, I clarified. For my own protection, and to ensure everything is handled properly. After yesterday, I think that is wise. Noah nodded slowly, understanding the implication. Trust had been broken, and now formal measures were necessary, where once family bonds would have sufficed. That afternoon, I called Harold Leibowitz, a lawyer I had known for 30 years. Harold had handled Martha's will and had helped me with various legal matters over the decades. I explained the situation, not omitting any details, including my own part in escalating tensions by packing their belongings. Chaim, you are well within your rights to ask them to leave, Harold assured me. They are essentially lodgers in your home, with no formal lease. However, given that they have established residency by living there for over a year, we need to follow proper eviction procedures to protect you legally. Harold agreed to meet with me the following day. I arrived at his downtown office at 10 o'clock, dressed in my good suit, the one I reserve for weddings and funerals. His secretary, Mrs. Finkelstein, who had been with him almost as long as I had known him, greeted me warmly. Mr. Goldstein, how nice to see you again. Mr. Leibowitz is ready for you. Harold's office was unchanged from my last visit years ago. Wood-paneled walls lined with law books and family photos. Harold himself looked older, his formerly dark hair now completely gray, but his handshake was as firm as ever. Chaim, good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances, he said, gesturing for me to take a seat. For the next hour, I shared the details of the past year with Harold, from Noah and Amanda moving in, to the gradual takeover of my home, to the final confrontation and police visit. Harold listened attentively, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. You have been more than generous, he said when I finished. Many parents would have established clear boundaries and expectations from the beginning, including rent payments and a defined timeline for the arrangement. I did not want to burden them when they were already struggling, I explained. Harold nodded understanding. That speaks to your character, Chaim, but now we need to protect your interests. He outlined the steps we would take, beginning with a formal written notice of termination of tenancy. Even though you have already given them verbal and written notice, we will issue an official document. This notice will specify the 30-day time frame and outline potential consequences if they fail to comply. I hesitated. What consequences? If they refuse to leave after the 30-day period, we would need to file for a formal eviction through the courts. That would create a record that could affect their ability to rent in the future. I doubt it will come to that, but they should understand the seriousness of the situation. Harold prepared the official notice while I waited, printing it on his firm's letterhead and having me sign it. He also drafted a simple document outlining my ownership rights and their status as non-paying lodgers with no lease agreement or ownership stake in the property. Keep copies of all these documents, he advised, and document any further incidents, especially if there are attempts to suggest you are mentally incompetent. That is a serious accusation and could be seen as elder abuse, if used manipulatively to maintain control of your property. I left Harold's office with a folder of documents and a renewed sense of purpose. The formal approach felt strange to use with my own son, but Harold's perspective had helped me see that I was not being unreasonable or unkind. I was simply establishing necessary boundaries that should have been in place long ago. When I returned home, Noah's car was in the driveway alongside Amanda's. I found them sitting in the living room, clearly waiting for me. "We need to talk," Noah said as I entered. "I agree," I replied, sitting in my armchair across from them. "I have just come from meeting with my attorney. I have the formal notice here." I placed the document on the coffee table between us. Amanda's eyes widened. "You really got a lawyer? Against your family? After you called the police on me, suggesting I was mentally unstable for asking you to respect my home?" "Yes, I felt legal protection was necessary." Noah picked up the document, scanning it quickly. "Dad, this is serious. This would give us an eviction record if we do not comply." "It would," I confirmed, "which is why I hope it does not come to that. The notice gives you 30 days from today to find alternative housing and remove your belongings. I am willing to assist with moving costs if that helps." "This is cruel," Amanda said, her voice rising. "You would really put your own son on the street?" "I am not putting anyone on the street. I am asking adult family members who have lived rent-free in my home for over a year to find their own housing, with reasonable notice and even financial assistance. That is the opposite of cruelty." Noah looked at the document again, then at me. I could see him processing the reality of the situation. "What if we paid rent? Would you let us stay then?" I had anticipated this question and had discussed it with Harold. "No, Noah. The issue is not just financial. It is about respect and boundaries, which have been repeatedly violated. This living arrangement is no longer healthy for any of us." "So that is it? After everything we have done to help around here, update the place, keep you company?" Amanda's tone was incredulous. "Amanda," I said, keeping my voice level, changing my home without permission was not help I asked for, and companionship does not grant ownership or decision-making authority over someone else's property. Noah put a restraining hand on Amanda's arm as she opened her mouth to respond. "We understand, Dad. We will start looking for a place." He turned to Amanda. "He is right. We have overstayed and overstepped. It is time we got back on our feet anyway." Amanda pulled away from him, storming upstairs. Noah looked at me apologetically. "She will calm down. This is just a shock." "I know it is difficult," I conceded. "But it is necessary, Noah, for all of us." Over the next few days, the house settled into an uneasy peace. Noah began actively job hunting, spending hours on his computer sending out resumes. Amanda was rarely home, presumably at her part-time job or looking for apartments. When our paths crossed, conversation was minimal but civil. A week after serving the formal notice, I found an information packet on apartments for seniors on the kitchen counter when I came down for breakfast. The brochure was open to a page about assisted living facilities, with certain sections highlighted. It was a passive-aggressive suggestion that I was the one who should move out, not them. I placed the brochure in the recycling bin without comment. That evening, I found a business card for a geriatric psychiatrist tucked under my coffee mug. Again, I discarded it without reaction. These were desperate attempts to unsettle me, to make me question my decision or my competence. But I remained firm, bolstered by Harold's legal advice and the knowledge that I was standing up for myself in a way Martha would have approved. During this tense period, I found support from unexpected sources. My neighbors, the Ramirez family, invited me for dinner and offered their full support when I explained the situation. Mrs. Ramirez, who had been Martha's close friend, was particularly outraged on my behalf. "Chaim, you gave them a home when they needed it. There is nothing wrong with expecting respect in return." Her validation meant more than she knew. Bernie and Jack, my poker buddies, rallied around me as well. Bernie offered his son's services as a mover when the time came, and Jack invited me to stay with him if I ever felt uncomfortable in my own home during the transition. With this support network and Harold's legal backing, I felt equipped to face whatever challenges the next few weeks might bring. The path forward was difficult but clear. This was not just about reclaiming my physical space, but about restoring my autonomy and dignity in the home Martha and I had built together. As the days passed, the tension in the house grew more palpable. Noah seemed to be making genuine efforts to find new housing and employment, spending hours on his laptop and taking phone calls in hushed tones. Amanda, however, had adopted a different strategy. Rather than preparing for their departure, she seemed determined to make the remaining time as uncomfortable as possible. The passive-aggressive placement of senior living brochures evolved into more overt actions. She began inviting friends over more frequently than ever, hosting loud gatherings that lasted well into the night. When I asked them to keep the noise down, her response was coldly formal. "We still live here for the next 3 weeks. We are entitled to use the space as we see fit." One evening, I came home to find 4 unfamiliar young people lounging in my living room. They barely acknowledged my entrance, continuing their loud conversation and leaving snack wrappers strewn across the coffee table. "Excuse me, who are you?" I asked, setting down my groceries. A young man with a scraggly beard looked up lazily. "We are friends of Amanda. She said we could crash here for a few days." I was stunned. "Crash here? You mean sleep here?" "Yeah, man. Just until we find a new place. Our landlord kicked us out without notice. Totally illegal, right?" I immediately understood what was happening. Amanda was moving her friends in, either as an act of defiance or as a misguided attempt to make me uncomfortable enough to rescind my eviction notice. Either way, it was unacceptable. I went upstairs and found Amanda in the guest room, folding laundry with deliberate slowness. "There are strangers in my living room who say they are staying here," I said without preamble. She did not look up. "They are my friends, not strangers. They needed a place to stay." "This is not a hostel, Amanda. I did not agree to house your friends." "Well, you are kicking us out, so I thought I would help some people who are in the same situation. Show some compassion, like family is supposed to do." Her emphasis on family was pointed and bitter. "You need to tell them to leave. Now." Amanda finally looked at me, her expression challenging. "Or what? You will call the police? Evict us sooner? Get another lawyer involved?" I took a deep breath, refusing to be provoked. "Yes, if necessary. My notice specified you and Noah, not additional lodgers. This is a clear violation of our agreement." "Fine." She shrugged with exaggerated nonchalance. "I will tell them to leave. But you know, for someone who talks about family and helping others, you sure are selective about who deserves compassion." I left without responding to her attempt to provoke guilt. Downstairs, I began preparing dinner, keeping an eye on the living room, where the unwelcome guests remained, sprawled across my furniture. An hour later, after what sounded like a heated conversation upstairs, they finally gathered their belongings and left, casting resentful glances my way. That night, I began documenting every incident of harassment or boundary violation in a notebook Harold had advised me to keep. I noted the date, time, and nature of each incident, as well as any witnesses. If things continued to escalate, this documentation could be crucial. And escalate they did. The next morning, I woke to find the kitchen in disarray. Dishes piled in the sink, food left out overnight, cabinet doors left open. It was a petty act of defiance, but telling. I cleaned up without comment and added it to my log. The following days brought more of the same. The television volume would be set to maximum when I was trying to read. The water heater would mysteriously be drained just before I planned to shower. Small items around the house went missing, only to reappear in unusual places days later. Through it all, I maintained my composure, documenting everything, but refusing to engage in arguments. Noah seemed increasingly uncomfortable with Amanda's behavior, but unwilling or unable to confront her about it. 2 weeks into the 30-day notice period, I received an unexpected phone call. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. "Is this Chaim Goldstein?" a male voice asked. Yes, speaking. Mr. Goldstein, my name is Michael Turner. I am Amanda's brother. This was surprising. In all the time Noah and Amanda had lived with me, I had never met or heard much about Amanda's family. Noah had mentioned once that she was not close with her parents, but that was all I knew. What can I do for you, Michael? I asked cautiously. Actually, I was hoping I could do something for you. I heard about the situation with Noah and Amanda living in your house, and I wanted to apologize. Now I was truly taken aback. Apologize? Yes. Amanda called our parents asking for money for a new apartment, and the whole story came out. About them living with you rent-free, about her telling you to leave your own house, even about calling the police, claiming you were having some kind of breakdown. I see, I said, unsure how to respond. Mr. Goldstein, I need to tell you that this is not the first time this has happened. Amanda and Noah lived with my wife and me for 8 months 3 years ago. It started the same way, with them needing temporary help. It ended with them taking over our house, my wife in tears most days, and me finally having to threaten legal action to get them to leave. A cold realization washed over me. This was a pattern, not an isolated incident. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I wish someone had warned me, and because I want to help if I can. I know how Amanda operates when she feels cornered. She will escalate, try to make you look like the villain, maybe even try to damage your property or reputation. We spoke for nearly an hour. Michael shared details of his experience that mirrored mine with eerie similarity. The gradual takeover of space, the dismissal of boundaries, the emotional manipulation when confronted. By the end of our conversation, I had gained not just validation, but a potential ally. I would be willing to come and help mediate, Michael offered. Amanda might listen to me, or at least be less likely to act out with me there. I accepted his offer gratefully. We arranged for him to visit in 3 days' time, when both Noah and Amanda would be home. Michael suggested not telling them he was coming, to prevent Amanda from creating excuses to be absent. The day of Michael's visit arrived. I had not mentioned our conversation to Noah or Amanda, who continued their pattern of minimal communication with me. At precisely 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael, a tall man in his early 40s with the same dark hair as Amanda, but with a kinder expression. "Thank you for coming," I said, shaking his hand. "I just hope it helps," he replied. We entered the living room, where Noah and Amanda were watching television. Amanda's expression, when she saw her brother, was a mixture of shock and anger. "Michael, what are you doing here?" she demanded, standing up abruptly. "I came to talk, Amanda, about what is happening here." Noah looked confused. "What is going on? You know each other?" Michael turned to him. "I am Amanda's brother, and I am here because what you two are doing to Mr. Goldstein is exactly what you did to my family 3 years ago." The next hour was tense, but productive. Michael calmly but firmly called out Amanda's behavior, drawing parallels between what she had done in his home and what she was doing in mine. Noah seemed genuinely shocked by some of the revelations, particularly about how they had left Michael's house in disarray when they finally moved out. "You never told me we were asked to leave," he said to Amanda. "You said Michael's house was too small for us." "It does not matter now," Amanda snapped. "They are ganging up on us. Can you not see that?" "No one is ganging up on anyone," Michael said. "We are just asking you to respect Chaim's home and leave when the notice period ends, without further drama or damage." The intervention continued with Michael proposing a concrete exit plan. He had researched affordable apartments in the area and offered to help with the first month's security deposit as a loan. He also suggested that Noah apply for a position at his friend's accounting firm, which was currently hiring. As the conversation progressed, I saw Noah's demeanor change. He seemed to be seeing Amanda's behavior in a new light, perhaps recognizing patterns he had been blind to before. Amanda, sensing her losing position, grew quieter, her earlier defiance giving way to grudging acknowledgement of the inevitable. By the end of the meeting, Concrete plans were in place. Noah had contact information for a potential job and 3 apartments to visit. Amanda had agreed, with obvious reluctance, to stop her disruptive behavior during their remaining time in my home. Michael would check in regularly by phone with both them and me to ensure the transition proceeded smoothly. As Michael prepared to leave, he pulled me aside. "Keep documenting everything," he advised quietly. "I know my sister. She may agree now, but that does not mean she will follow through." His warning proved partially correct. While the most overt harassment stopped, Amanda maintained a cold distance, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary. Noah, on the other hand, seemed to be making a genuine effort to repair our relationship. He apologized several times for not seeing how their behavior had affected me, and began helping around the house again, much as he had when they first moved in. 2 weeks later, 3 days before the eviction deadline, Noah announced they had found an apartment and signed a lease. He had also secured a provisional job offer, pending final interviews. The clouds that had hung over our relationship for so long began to lift, allowing cautious optimism to peek through. On moving day, Noah rented a truck and enlisted friends to help transport their belongings. I watched from the porch as my house was gradually reclaimed, box by box. Amanda maintained her distance, directing movers and purposely avoiding eye contact with me. Noah, however, approached me as the last of their items was loaded. "Dad, I am really sorry for everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I did not see what was happening, how we were treating you in your own home." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You were going through a difficult time. I understand that. That is no excuse. Mom would have been so disappointed in me." His voice broke slightly at the mention of Martha. "She would have understood," I assured him, "and she would be proud to see you taking responsibility now." We embraced, a rare physical connection that felt like the first step toward healing our damaged relationship. As Noah joined Amanda in their car, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that my home was mine again, sadness that it had come to this, hope that with time and space, my relationship with my son might be repaired, and gratitude for the unexpected allies who had helped me stand my ground. As their car pulled away from the curb, I stood in the doorway of my empty, peaceful home, ready to begin the next chapter of my life on my own terms. The house felt different after they left. Quieter, certainly, but also somehow larger, as if the space itself could breathe again. The first night alone, I walked through each room, reacquainting myself with corners and nooks that had been colonized for the past year. I ran my hands along the bookshelves, now restored with my books in their proper places. I sat in my reading chair by the window, enjoying the simple pleasure of peace. That first week was devoted to restoration. I deep-cleaned every room, washing away the lingering presence of conflict. I rehung Martha's photographs in the hallway, carefully placing each one in its original position. In the garden, I tended to the plants that had been neglected during the tumultuous final months, gently pruning the roses and turning the soil for spring planting. Harold called to check on me, offering legal advice should there be any further issues. Michael kept in touch too, apologizing again for his sister's behavior and thanking me for not holding it against him. I assured him that family connections are complex, and we are not responsible for the actions of our relatives, only for how we respond to them. Noah called after a week in their new apartment. Our conversation was tentative at first, both of us carefully navigating the fragile bridge being rebuilt between us. He had started his new job and seemed genuinely engaged with the work. He asked if he could visit the following Sunday, alone. When Sunday arrived, I prepared a simple lunch, nothing elaborate like my birthday dinner that had gone uneaten, just sandwiches and soup. Noah arrived punctually, bearing a small potted plant as a housewarming gift, a gesture that acknowledged that this was indeed my house, my home. We ate lunch in the kitchen, talking about his new job and apartment. He avoided mentioning Amanda directly, though I gathered from his careful phrasing that things were strained between them as well. I have been thinking a lot about how things went wrong, he said finally, setting down his spoon. I let someone else dictate my relationship with my father. I let myself be blind to how we were treating you because it was easier than confronting the truth. We all make mistakes, Noah. This was more than a mistake, Dad. It was a betrayal. Of you, of what Mom would have wanted, of the values you both raised me with. He looked around the kitchen, his eyes landing on the space where Martha's cookie jar had always sat, now restored to its rightful place. I keep thinking about what Mom would say if she saw how I let you be treated in the home you built together. Your mother was never one to hold grudges, I reminded him. She believed in second chances. Did you know Amanda and I are seeing a counselor? He said, changing direction. It was part of my condition for continuing our marriage. We need to work through some significant issues. I nodded, pleased that he was seeking help but choosing not to comment directly on their marriage. That was their private business to work through. I would like to come for dinner sometimes, Noah continued. Maybe once a week? Just to check in on you and spend some time together. I would like that very much, I replied, feeling a warmth that had been absent for too long. And so began a new rhythm to my life. Noah came for dinner every Thursday, sometimes bringing groceries or helping with small repairs around the house. Amanda never accompanied him, and I did not ask about her absence. According to Noah, she was still angry and blamed me for their financial struggles, but he was no longer allowing her version of events to be the only one he acknowledged. With my home reclaimed and a repaired relationship with Noah taking shape, I turned my attention to rebuilding other aspects of my life that had been neglected. I rejoined my weekly poker game with Bernie and Jack, who welcomed me back without dwelling on my absence. I reconnected with old colleagues from my construction days, meeting for coffee, and conversations that recalled a lifetime of building and creating. I also discovered new interests. The local community center offered classes for seniors, everything from watercolor painting to basic computer skills. I signed up for both, finding unexpected joy in learning new skills. The painting instructor, a retired art teacher named Sophia, became a friend, encouraging my clumsy first attempts with genuine enthusiasm. 3 months after Noah and Amanda moved out, I received a letter from Harold. He had been monitoring public records and discovered that Amanda had filed a small claims court case against her previous landlord, claiming illegal eviction. The case had been dismissed due to lack of evidence. Harold suggested documenting this in case similar claims ever arose regarding her stay in my home. I filed the information away, hoping it would never be needed, but grateful for Harold's continued vigilance. 6 months after they moved out, Noah invited me to lunch at a restaurant halfway between our homes. When I arrived, I was surprised to find Michael there as well. The two men had developed their own friendship, united initially by their shared experience with Amanda, but finding common ground in other areas as well. Dad, we wanted to talk to you about something, Noah began after we had ordered. Michael and I have been discussing what happened, trying to understand the pattern. Michael nodded. We realized that Amanda has a history of this behavior, not just with us, but with her parents and at least one other relative. There is a pattern of moving in, taking over, and then playing the victim when boundaries are enforced. Noah looked uncomfortable but continued. I should have seen it sooner. There were signs before we even moved in with you. The way she would talk about her family as if they had abandoned her, when really they had simply stopped enabling behavior that was harmful to everyone. Are you still seeing the counselor? I asked. Yes, Noah confirmed. It is helping me recognize these patterns and set better boundaries. But it is a difficult process. I nodded, understanding the complex web of love, commitment, and self-protection he was navigating. You know I am here for you, whatever happens. As the months passed, my life settled into a new normal. I maintained regular contact with Noah, whose marriage continued, but with clearer boundaries and ongoing counseling. My circle of friends expanded through my classes and community activities. The house became a place of peace again, filled with books, music, and occasionally the laughter of friends. 1 year after the eviction, I invited Noah, Michael, Harold, and my closest friends for a dinner party. It was not labeled as a celebration of reclaiming my home, but everyone understood the significance of the anniversary. We ate, drank, and shared stories late into the evening. When the others had left, Noah stayed behind to help clean up. "You seem happy, Dad," he observed as we washed dishes side by side. "I am," I confirmed. "It has been a journey, but I have found my way back to myself." "I admire how you handled everything," he said, drying a plate slowly. "You stood your ground without becoming bitter. I am not sure I could have done the same." "I had good people in my corner," I replied, "and I had your mother's voice in my head, reminding me that self-respect is not selfish." That night after Noah left, I sat in the garden under the stars. The past year had taught me profound lessons about boundaries, respect, and the courage to protect what is precious. I had learned that love does not require self-erasure, that helping others should not mean hurting yourself, and that standing firm in your truth is not unkindness, but necessary self-care. I had also discovered that age brings not just vulnerability, but wisdom and strength. At 68, I was not the frail, confused elder Amanda had tried to portray me as, but a man with decades of experience navigating life's complexities. That experience had given me the perspective to see the situation clearly and the courage to address it directly. Most importantly, I had learned that family relationships can be repaired when built on honest communication and mutual respect. Noah and I were closer now than before, our bond strengthened by the difficult path we had walked together. As I looked up at the night sky, I imagined Martha sitting beside me, her hand in mine, as it had been for so many years. "You would be proud," I whispered to the stars. "Not just of me, but of Noah too." We found our way back. If there is one lesson I hope you take from my story, it is this: love should never require you to diminish yourself. True love, whether for family, friends, or partners, thrives in an environment of mutual respect and clear boundaries. Standing up for yourself is not selfish or cruel, but necessary for healthy relationships. I wonder if any of you have faced similar situations with family members or friends who crossed boundaries. How did you handle it, and what did you learn? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more life lessons from someone who has walked this earth for nearly 7 decades. Remember, it is never too late to reclaim your space, your dignity, and your peace of mind. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to stand firm in your own truth.